Welcome to the 2024 Judicial Candidate Forums. My name is Lisa McPherson. I'm the Executive Director of the Cincinnati Bar Association. I'd like to start by thanking our judicial candidates for being here tonight. I'd also like to thank our forum partners, the Cincinnati Association, the League of Women Voters, and the Women's City Club. Our shared mission is to help build a strong community, and educating voters is the first step toward that shared goal. Tonight, we are holding a forum that will cover candidates running for judge on the Hamilton County Court of Common Pleas. There are 3 judicial seats open for the Common Pleas Court. This court hears criminal felony cases, all cases with civil disputes over $15,000, and cases involving real estate, but not evictions. Now, as we begin our dialogue, let me introduce our moderator. He will be arriving shortly, and we are going to get started with candidate introductions. So we'll just start with Judge Winkler. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Judge Robert Winkler. I'm running for the Court of Common Pleas. I'll let you tell you a little bit about myself that maybe you don't know. I'm married. I have twin daughters, and I have a son. I volunteered as a track coach, basketball coach, and various other endeavors with my kids, like probably many of you have done. I just rotated off the board of the Cincinnati Children's Dyslexia Center, where I was the chairman for 2 years. Now, concerning my background and experience, I essentially started my career in the prosecutor's office, worked my way from the juvenile division into the municipal division, and then finally into the Court of Common Pleas. I left the prosecutor's office after 7 years and went into private practice. Primarily handled personal injury cases, as well as a lot of probate work and other civil matters. Now, with regard to my judicial service, I've been elected to the Hamilton County Municipal Court, served there for 4 years, and then was elected to the Court of Common Pleas, where I served for 12 years. I eventually was elected to the First District Court of Appeals, and I'm ending my term there with the Court of Appeals. It's a 6-year term. And earlier this year, I served by appointment the Chief Justice on the Ohio Supreme Court. So as far as I know, I've served on most every court in the state of Ohio. I've presided over more than 30,000 cases, tried numerous trials, and have the experience I think is necessary to carry out the Court of Common Pleas judgeship. And that's all I have. I'll defer the rest of my time to the next.
Good evening, everybody, and thanks to the CBA for hosting us. I'm Virginia Talent, and I'm one of the candidates for the Common Pleas General Division in the field race. I'm a career-long public servant and public interest lawyer. I'm a proud mom and wife. I've got 2 boys, and I'm also a proud Cincinnati resident. And I've spent my entire career focused on finding real solutions to difficult community problems. Everything from reducing gun violence to housing stability and the preservation of affordable housing. I'm a UC Law grad, where I graduated with honors, was on the moot court board, and started my career at the Legal Aid Society of Greater Cincinnati, where I spent a decade as really a trial attorney, helping marginalized people to fight eviction, foreclosure, fighting slum housing conditions in our community, representing disabled children and their families, trying to assist them to receive special education services throughout Southwest Ohio. Fast forward a few years, joined the city's law department, where I was on the affirmative litigation team as a trial lawyer. The last couple of years, I've been serving as a public administrator and one of the deputy city managers for the city of Cincinnati, where I work really hard every day to support our city's public safety departments and to also carry out the city's human services mission. And it's really my combination of experiences, both as an administrative leader, an effective trial advocate, and as a problem solver for the community, that I'd like to bring to the bench. And I'm gonna kick it to Steve Simon.
All right. Thank you, Virginia, and thank you, the Cincinnati Bar Association, for hosting. Steve Simon, I've been practicing law in Cincinnati for 27 years, and I've spent a lot of time in this building, the CBA, and this very room. Proud to be a very active member of the CBA. I'm a labor and employment lawyer. That's what I've done my whole career, and I've represented labor unions and working people. I've represented individual employees who have suffered some sort of injustice in the workplace, and like discrimination or retaliation. And I've been very proud to do that and brought many cases in common pleas and had some success doing that. Again, very proud of that. It's not always been easy in that court since 1997. Many of the judges in the past often had a very limited background before they were on the bench, not that familiar with civil cases, and quite honestly, just not very sympathetic to the kind of cases I was bringing, where I was challenging a company's decision. And worse yet, sometimes you would get a decision dismissing your case in the mail on a postcard, and that's just not acceptable. And I am committed to making sure on the civil docket and the criminal docket, all parties will be treated fairly, and all parties, regardless of the outcome, will have a decision with proper judicial reasoning. I also think that a judge should be a community leader, and I'm proud that I've served on the Pleasant Ridge Community Council. My wife and I moved to Pleasant Ridge in 2000. I was proud to join the council, where, of course, most meetings are devoted to safety. That's important so neighborhoods can thrive, and I think a judge has an important role to play in that. I also did some very special things on the council, including we led the effort to integrate our public neighborhood elementary school. And there's a great spirit in our neighborhood and throughout the city and county that I want to help bring to the bench. I do think we can have a more safe Cincinnati and just Cincinnati.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. It's hard when you are remote to figure out who is actually watching and how many eyeballs you have on you. But my name is Judge Leslie Giz. I am a judge in the Court of Common Pleas, and I'm running to retain my seat. My seat is up for re-election, as well as a second seat, which belongs to Lisa Allen currently. She will be retiring in the next few months. I have been on the bench for 12 years. I was elected for the first time in 2012, and I was sworn in 2013. Prior to that, I served 6 years on Cincinnati City Council. I've been practicing law. I don't want to say it out loud because then I realize how old I really am. And when Steve said that, I thought, oh no, 30 years. I graduated in around mid 1990. But at any rate, I moved to Cincinnati and have been practicing law here since. My area of practice was labor and employment, the same as Steve was just going over, the same exact type of work, working for labor unions, working for employees who have been discriminated in some fashion. The primary bulk of my practice was actually in federal court. But I have two teenage boys, which keeps me very busy. On my spare time, I'm chasing them around and making sure they grow up to be good citizens, hopefully. And I'm hoping that you'll get to learn a little more about me tonight in watching this forum. So thank you for tuning in.
Good evening. My name is Chris Lips. Thank you to the CBA for having us and hosting this forum. I am born and raised here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I currently live on the west side of town with my wife and daughter. And I've running for this to be your next common pleas court judge because I believe I have the practical experience in the courtroom to be on the bench. I've handled every single type of case, a criminal case, from a speeding ticket all the way up to aggravated murder. And every case in between. My experience in the courtroom, where I'm at every single day in the Common Pleas courtroom, consists of me handling cases involving very violent, serious offenders. I'm currently assigned as the sole attorney that handles crimes against children and internet sex crimes against children. I've been a prosecutor, as indicated, with the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office for the last total 12 years combined. In between that time, I also served on the bench as a magistrate with the Hamilton County Domestic Relations Court. In that capacity, I listened to cases. I sat on the bench. I listened to persons that would come in seeking a civil protection order. These were victims of violent criminal or crimes, of domestic violence abuse, and also sexual abuse against children. I do have extensive experience in handling these types of cases that will come in front of this court. I do believe that based on my experience and based upon my time on the bench, I have the correct judicial temperament and also the respect in the community, and I hope to bring that to the bench for Hamilton County.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Bernard Mundy. I'm running from Common Pleas General Division. I'm a Cincinnati native and a proud product of Cincinnati Public Schools. I like to share my personal story. Back in the early 70s, 1971, my grandmother saved my late sister and I from foster care, and she provided a loving and stable home, which allowed me to thrive. That was the first big inflection point in my life. And the second big inflection point was going to Walnut Hills High School, where I had access to a world-class education. There, I went on to Miami University, where I played football and I studied mass communications. Area of specialization was broadcast journalism. I thought I wanted to be a newsman. But through the course of my life, I had a mentor, Len Marmer, who was an associate at Strauss and Troy, and she guided me to a career in law. So after I served time as the courthouse clerk at Strauss and Troy, which is on the bottom rung of the organizational chart, or maybe perhaps even under it, I went on to UC Law School. When I was at UC Law School, my favorite law professor was Ken Applin, who taught me Crim Pro 1 and Crim Pro 2. Because of my personal background, I decided I wanted to represent citizens accused of crime. I've devoted my career to representing indigent defendants. Those are citizens who can't afford their own attorneys. I've handled everything from minor misdemeanor all the way up to aggravated murder, including many trials and everything in between. Similar to Mr. Lips, I have the kind of broad experience in the criminal arena that you won't find. I've been practicing for 30 years now. And so as a 30-year trial lawyer, I think, and I always tell prospective voters, that a trial lawyer probably makes the best candidate for a trial judge because the skill set is completely transferable. I'm hopeful to bring a different perspective to the bench. The color of justice in America, in my opinion, is green. And now my time is up. Thank you.
Thank you all. And now as we transition to the question points of the forum, I'd like to introduce John Williams. John will be our moderator tonight. He's spent his entire legal career in Cincinnati. He's a past president of the CBA and is Associate General Counsel for First Group America. So we will switch our mic and welcome John. Thank you.
Thanks. Hello, everybody. Good. Sorry for my little delay there. So we'll just get right into the questions. So, we had our candidates poll that I'm sure you've all have reviewed by now. The Bar Association Judicial Candidate Poll covers 6 categories: administrative diligence, communication skills, community engagement, integrity, and partiality, objectivity, legal experience, professionalism, temperament. Where do you think you rate the highest? In which category would you want to improve upon? Who would like to go first? Okay. All right. Candidate Simon.
All right. Well, thanks, John, for the question. Yeah, these scores, when they were issued, I'll just say, very pleased. I've certainly made it part of my practice. I had good mentors early in my career, and I've always thought collegiality is very important among the bar. And as I said in my opening remarks, I've spent a lot of time at the Cincinnati Bar Association. I'm currently on the Ethics Committee. I also serve on the Cincinnati Bar Foundation. And for the better part of 20 years, I've been on the Cincinnati Bar Association Labor and Employment Committee or practice group. I was the chair, I was the vice chair, very active in planning CLE annual seminars and monthly meetings. And the reason I bring it up is it's always been a real pleasure, particularly in my area, to have folks who represent plaintiffs like myself and management lawyers on the other side be part of these collaborative meetings. And it's all about educating each other and the bar about these issues, particular to our practice. But it's also been fun to actually, get into it, for lack of a better word. We obviously have very different perspectives on employment law. So some of the same lawyers who I've, battled in the trenches, I've been very pleased during this campaign, have contributed to my campaign. And that's, I've taken as a really wonderful compliment. So to see these scores where temperament and integrity and experience are just out of this, overwhelmingly top score, excellent, obviously was a very nice compliment. In terms of improvement, I would hope that if I'm so fortunate to be elected to the bench, that after 6 years, if I'm interested in reelection, I would see similar scores. I certainly understand as judge, you're often going to make one person unhappy, but I'm very pleased with how I've interacted with opposing counsel, and I would hope that would continue, and we would see the same scores 6 years from now.
All right, I'll move to candidate talent.
Thank you, John. Much like Steve, I was just really thrilled with my scores, and we'll dig into a couple of them that I think are extremely relevant to my candidacy for the Common Pleas bench. The first was administrative diligence. Administrative diligence and the ability to be an effective case manager as a judge, really to deliver an efficient and effective courtroom is a priority for my campaign and something that I will continue to prioritize when elected to the Common Pleas bench. Specifically, what members of the CBA and all litigants can expect from me is trial date certainty. They can expect ruling date certainty. They can expect transparency. They can expect hearings to occur on the date and time that they are set. And it's really this level of intentionality around efficiency that I brought to my current role as an assistant CD manager that I'll certainly continue on as a judge. And it's something that will make life better for lawyers and also for parties, certainly for business litigants who have to make important decisions around the time value of going to trial and trial date. The second thing that I'll highlight for everybody is really community engagement. I mentioned during my opening remarks that I'm a community-focused leader, and I'm thrilled to see that reflected in my scores. I think that matters tremendously to what someone brings to the bench, because if you don't understand the problems and the perspective of the community, you're not going to be a community-centered leader. And so that is something that I'll certainly continue and that I've demonstrated as a professional. The one area that I can improve, it looks like, is legal experience, but I still rate it as excellent. I think I'm the youngest here. I can't tell maybe if Chris and I are the same age. So I'm sure that that score will only continue to improve, but again, was so fortunate to be rated as excellent.
Well, this age conversation is making me feel old because I believe I'm the oldest one here. So I was just thinking, I'm with you on that one. All right. All right.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
All right.
I looked at my scores when I received them. I was pleased with my scores. This is probably the fourth one of these that I've been evaluated with. I mean, I've been around, I think you and I are probably about the same age, but I was around when you still sat around a table with attorneys down here at the Bar Association, and they would ask you questions, and then they would rate you. I'm glad they did away with that. Never happened to me, but some of the ratings were pretty brutal, like not recommended and that sort of thing. And I think maybe, John, you had something to do with getting rid of that. That didn't happen to me, fortunately. But looking at my scores, what I could improve on is actually, and I was kind of a little bit surprised actually at the community engagement, because I think mine and Virginia's probably was flipped. But, and I thought about it and I'm like, well, okay, wonder why that is. I and I think that the reason it was the way it was because I have 18-year-old twin daughters, and I used to participate in a lot of the bar association things in a court. And I was down here when they were toddlers, and I thought I shouldn't be here. I should be at home because I mean, frankly, my family comes first. And so I didn't, I'm once again participating in a court now that they're in college. But the other thing is too, I spend my entire day with attorneys, and I'm disinclined, and not offense, no offense to attorneys. I want to spend it with other people, and not necessarily attorneys. And I mentioned earlier that I was on the board of the Children's Dyslexia Centers of Cincinnati. I served as a chairman. It was a 6-year term. We were the fundraising arm, and I guess that's a little bit behind the scenes. I support my brother. He's on melanoma, the board of Melanoma No More, KNOW No More. I had a sister that died of melanoma, so of course we support that. So, and that might be the reason being. So anyway, I was pleased with my scores.
All right. And, you know, part of the question is whether you're pleased with your scores or not. I mean, if you dig into that, are there categories in there that it's kind of what Bob just did, shifted thinking, community was surprised. He thought he would be, you know, maybe it would be different. So what we want you to share with us is just really, you know, even in your own mind, what do you think is your best category? And what is a category that you think you want to approve upon? And although I shifted the question a little bit for you three, but if we keep it to that, I think it would be probably a little more succinct answers for us until we can keep moving. But go for it, Chris.
Microphone's in front of me. I'll
Yeah.
sit on the side of the table. You know, when I'm looking at the scores, you know, I was overall pleased with, you know, the polling results. Obviously, I see that this was a poll through the Cincinnati Bar Association. Actually, not a member of the CBA, and I see that only 45 of 150 people responded to me. But that being said, even though I only received 30% of the polling, I still think I really had high scores. But when I look at the things, the polling that I did not do well on, or I say that was lower, would be community engagement. And I think that is something that if I would promote my community engagement and how much I'm involved in my community, I think those scores would be different. I engaged in lots of different volunteer activities. I engage in lots of different community organizations. As I said, Adopt a Class, I do that with my office. We go and speak and meet with children daily. I've worked with the Riverside Kiwanis and raising money for children. I've worked with Ronald McDonald House in the past as well, part of their Red Shoe crew. And I continue to always support various charities. Most recently was part of the Alzheimer's Walk to End Alzheimer's down at Sawyer Point. So I want people to know that about me, that I am really focused in the community. And I think as a judicial candidate and as a judge in the community, that's important. And you should be involved not just in your local community, the one that you're living in, but that should expand out to other communities that you don't connect with as often. Where I think I could improve based on the where I want to improve is obviously I would like to see it says integrity, impartiality, and objectivity. I believe as a magistrate, I showed those skills of being an objective, neutral fact finder. And I see that those scores are low. I want to be able to prove that to the members of the community that I can be that neutral, unbiased fact finder, excuse me, that's required when being a judge.
Judge Gill. Oh. No. Yeah, Bernie.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bernie. We'll get there.
Okay. Well, I wasn't surprised by the professionalism and temperament score, and I was pleased with it. And I was a little surprised by the administrative diligence because I pride myself on being able to do the work in a timely fashion. All of these scores, there's room for improvement. So I would endeavor to improve each category. I think the people that work most closely with me probably didn't respond to the questionnaire or the poll. but I didn't dig into them as much as everyone else did, to be quite honest with you. I didn't go to the raw data. I just looked at the score and moved on from there. That's all I have on that.
All right, thank you. Judge Giz?
Well, I think mine look normal on the bar graph. So let me explain why I say that. The graph that comes up first in these results is not indicative of what the actual results are because of the amount of people. Each of us had a different number of people respond to having contact with us. And as a trial court judge, mine look exactly where they should be. And that is because people are not going to like the decisions you make. Some people are going to knock you down because they don't like that you found a certain way in a civil case or that you sentenced too harshly to their client as a defendant or vice versa. You know, they're thrilled on the other end of it. So I think mine kind of land normally as a trial court judge that's been on the bench for 12 years, even though mine don't say professionalism, 77%. That doesn't mean I'm not professional overall. My collective is high. But the thing that really kind of surprised me was community engagement because I can't remember the number, but maybe 40%-ish said that they didn't know what my community engagement was. And as Judge Winkler said, the reason for that is I've been raising 2 children on my own. So they're now teenagers, but my primary focus has been their schools, our church, our community with these kids because I was number one, the only parent, but also because that's what you do as the parent of a small child. What I have started doing as they've gotten older is gotten more involved with the Bar Association and interacting with attorneys more, which is kind of fun because it's more adult and it's nice. So I hope that number improves for sure next time around, that people see me more in the legal community. But I hope that they show some grace as to why they haven't seen me, as I've raised 2 children who were toddlers when I was sworn into the bench.
All right. I've been asked to remind the candidates to try to focus and speak into the mic. I don't know if you, but just as a reminder for everybody. All right. As a matter of fact, because I'm going to come back to you since you were last that time. Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of the courts? If so, how should they carry out that obligation?
I think they do. It's hard for people when I go and speak at events, like a couple of times I've been asked to speak to women's clubs or something at my church to a group of, and they don't have any concept of what happens in our court, at least in the Court of Common Pleas. And that's what we're dealing with right now. And I think it's important that people understand that. I teach a class at UC in the spring at the law school. And even though it's not part of state and local government per se, which is what I teach, I spend an entire class of practicality teaching them what each of the courts in the general division do, where you go to file something, that type of thing. How we can improve that is just, we've made some pretty good strides recently, our court has, in reaching out to the community to explain to them where you go and how you do it. And that has been, I'd say since COVID, it's gotten a lot better. But I think the way you do that is you get out into community groups, and our presiding judge now, Judge Wendy Cross, has really been encouraging us to do that, just to simply explain what we do, because all people see is us on television at the trial court when we're sentencing some defendant for something. They don't see the civil matters. They don't see the mediations. They don't see any of that. And I think that's how you start doing it. And certainly reaching out through the Bar Association is also a good help.
Candidate Lips?
Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of the courts? If so, how should they carry out that obligation?
Thank you. I do think that's an obligation of the court as a whole. And so as a member of the judiciary, I would advocate for our common pleas court to make efforts to engage with the public. I know that there have been efforts that have been made on a few, depending on the courtroom. Some court cases have been handled out in the community, whether it be an arraignment, or a motion hearing. I know some have been handled at UC Law School. I think other cases have been done out at various city councils. I would support that because I think it's important that each individual in the community, if they can't make it down to the courthouse, that they can still see how a court operates. I definitely believe that having an open courtroom and having access to all individuals is also important. Obviously, that's one of our, I think, guiding principles is that we have open courtrooms for everyone. I would encourage, and I really enjoy when school classes come down to court and they sit in the back, and I like to engage with them and explain my role and my process, explain the defense attorney's role, who the parties are. I've also spoke to various high schools explaining my background and what I do in court. And as a judge, I would also make myself available for those community engagements. Lastly, I think that having information about what cases are heard and having that put out by the court is also important, so that not only if the general public wants to see what types of cases are being decided and how, for example, how long they took or who decided those cases, those should all be available to the public. So I would support that transparency about any type of criminal or civil case. Am I going this way?
Yes.
All right,
Monday.
there you go, sir.
Thank you, John. I also agree that the court has an obligation to improve the public's understanding of how it operates. And so the way I would do that is to go into the community and accept every speaking engagement to try to educate the public on what the court does. Also by having groups down to the courthouse and to observe what goes on. If we have something meaningful that could educate the public. Also, on the transparency piece, live streaming proceedings so that people could follow the court if they chose to do so from the comfort of their own home or office. And I think that would increase the public's understanding. Over the course of my career, talking to my friends who are very bright and in other areas, they don't really understand what the court does and what lawyers generally do. So thank you.
I'll go to candidate Simon.
Sure, thanks, Steve.
Yeah, no surprise. I agree with my fellow candidates that a judge absolutely has a role in educating the public about what goes on in the courthouse. And it just, to me, it's as key as managing your cases, making rulings. It is a part of the job that you need to be out in the community. I did serve, as I mentioned, on Pleasant Ridge Community Council for a number of years, and I don't recall ever seeing a judge come through. Discounting perhaps during the election cycle, I don't recall a judge ever coming down and explaining what goes on at the courthouse. Oh, my microphone went off there, but I think that's certainly a place to start. I think that the judges, seems to me, ought to be working with safety committee on city council and making reports so that everyone's on the same page. We're talking about public safety. One great thing that happened, that wasn't my idea at all, but is involves Judge Terry Nestor, who is running for the Court of Appeals. So if I win, I'd be taking his seat at Great American Ballpark this summer. They held Veterans Court at the not the ballpark itself, but outside in the mezzanine area, and they did an expungement for a veteran, and it was inspiring to see, and it was important to actually see a real live proceeding out there at Great American. So that was a nice thing I'd like to see continue. I must also say that I do remember as a kid going to the courthouse in junior high. Now, it wasn't Hamilton County Common Pleas, and it did leave a lasting impression. My recollection is, though, that it was a number of defendants being arraigned, as I recall, for prostitution. And I recall us being shuttled out of that courtroom very quickly, but I don't know if that's an accurate recollection. But that sort of thing, in all candor, is very important. Thank you.
Candidate Talent.
John, Steve's a tough act to follow. So yes, certainly a judge's role is to help improve and ensure the public's understanding of how courts operate. And I have 4 specific things that I'd like to share about my view on that. The first is that judges really owe it to the public and to lawyers who come before them to issue clear and specific rulings, not just judgment entries. So to really do the work of the law and to apply the law to the facts of each case so long as it's appropriate and where it's appropriate. The second thing has been shared by many of the colleagues here think judges have an affirmative role to go out into the community and also to invite the community into the courthouse. So when elected, I would do things like have formal intern and externship programs in my courtroom for high school students, college students, law students. I would go affirmatively to seek out speaking engagement opportunities at high school government classes, certain colleges, Xavier, NKU, UC. Thirdly, I think that we all owe it as lawyers, and certainly when elected as jurists, to improve access to justice. So I will be a judge when elected that's supportive of the Hamilton County Clerk of Courts Help Center, of expanding every opportunity that there is to make sure that people who are at the courthouse can get information that's relevant to the matter, relevant to their lives, and relevant to ensuring more equal and ethical justice. Lastly, I will run a transparent courtroom. I'm like Bernie said, I'm also very interested in live streaming. I think moreover, I'm also interested in transparency around sentencing data, also data about the outcomes of civil cases. I wish that there were more of that in Ohio, and I think if there were, that we would find ourselves in a better place with people's expectations around the court.
Well, all right. Well, thank you. I agree that the public should be more informed about the courts. The judiciary is the least understood of the three branches of government. Judges are governed by a set of rules that are not governed by the executive or the legislative branch. We are not permitted to comment on cases. We don't call press conferences. We don't do this. We don't do that. What I've done is I've had the externs from UC would come sit in my courtroom. In fact, I'm performing a wedding up in Columbus this weekend for one of my former externs. But what we can do is educate the public. What we do, Steve, I don't think I was on the bench when you came through, but classes still come down to the courthouse and they wander into your courtroom. There's about 100 kids and have a lot of questions. And unfortunately, a lot of times they come in on a very serious case that they probably should not be witnessing. But once that's realized, the teachers take them out. What we are doing, at least in the Court of Appeals now, is we held court out at Turpin High School earlier this year. And later this year in November, we're going to Walnut Hills High School where we'll hear oral arguments. And when that's over, we let the students ask questions about, we don't tell them what the outcome is going to be. We certainly allow them to ask questions and try to inform them without showing our hand. And with that, that's all I have on that.
All right, so this next question's kind of like Wheel of Fortune, that last puzzle. You know, it could be people, place, or thing. So, candidates, what are the three major influences in your life and why?
I've had several great influences in my life, and the first being my father. He was served on the Common Pleas court bench, and he was a longtime judge here in Hamilton County. He's still actually a judge here in the state of Ohio, and he has shown me the type of way to treat someone. He showed me how to treat everyone with respect, to give everyone their day in court, to have that same temperament that is necessary for being a judge. He did that at home, and I actually saw him firsthand when I would watch him do his decisions. My other influence, again, is my mother. My mother has been someone who's very committed. She worked over 40 years for one employer. My dad also was that way, worked for the same basic employer their whole lives. And I think that shows a commitment to others. I think that's the kind of commitment that I give to my role in a job and to community, to work hard, to have a strong work ethic, and to give everything you have to whatever job you have. You said 3 role models?
Yeah. And there's no pressure. If you don't have 3, you don't have 3.
No, it's
I said influences. Remember, influences.
Influences.
It could be the river. like you were, something like that.
And when I look back, I've also been influenced by, I played sports, and one of the great influence I had was a coach that I had, Coach Mike Price at Oak Hills High School. He was a tremendous influence for me. He taught me, again, as I talked about, hard work, dedication, always giving your heart, always giving your best, always giving, bring your most effort to everything you do. And I think combined with my mom and my dad, those influences and so many others, it's been, they've shaped me a lot. I've had obviously a lot of, my wife also has given me a lot of motivation. She's gone through some hard times.
It's your time, but I'm gonna let you save yourself on the wife part.
So there you go.
Listening, all right?
But as I said, they've all been very positive influences in my life. So.
All right, candidate Mundy.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. The number one influence in my life was my grandmother. She's a woman who was born in 1905 in Richmond, Kentucky, a woman of color. Likely didn't have the opportunity she should have. She worked as a school cafeteria worker and then later as a housekeeper for a somewhat prominent family here in the Cincinnati area. And she took my late sister and I in the spring of '71, as I stated earlier. And, she raised her youngest son's children where he was unwilling to do so. My mother struggled with illness, so she was not able to do so. And so she gave me the values and the work ethic that allowed me to pursue the career that I did, coming from poverty, living below the poverty line in Avondale, and still becoming the first college graduate in my family, and then professional school graduate, and then on to become a lawyer, practicing for 30 years now. Secondly, I would say my wife, because she has overcome a great deal of health challenges. I don't want to put too much of her business out there, but her resiliency, her bravery, and her intestinal fortitude has been a great, and she's one of the kindest people I know. She's much nicer than I am. And then thirdly, I tell you that the influence of competition. I played football in college, and it's the greatest meritocracy known to humanity is sport. And everybody's equal when it comes. You just bring your ability and what you've done to prepare, and you put it all out there. And so it has had an impact on me. It's how I carry myself professionally now. Not exactly like sport, but some of the same principles apply.
That's good.
I would say the first biggest influence, and as we all know, before I say my three influences, as you go through life, they fluctuate. Maybe if you'd asked me this 20 years ago, I would have a different version of who are my biggest influences, but always and steadily, number one is my father. My father died when I was 21. And if you've lost a parent at that, at a young age, you recognize that they become larger than life. And you remember everything very vividly that they did. And he was a very compassionate, a very socially active, in our community. He worked with handicapped children to teach them to play Little League. He started a Little League for them. He worked with our school board. He worked with just everything. He was involved in everything. But his motto was, and I swear this is true, every single day we got out of the car, he would say, when he dropped us in school, he would say, remember your name is Giz. And what that taught me was that you have to remember your name. Everything you do is a reflection on that name. The second influence would be my children, who I didn't have 20 years ago, but I do now. And they really do change my perception of how I look at everything in the world. It is much different now than it was 20 years ago when I was on city council with no children. And thirdly, some of the defendants I've had in my room that I have remained close with, that amaze me every day at how well they do and how they've integrated back and how they've overcome addiction. Most of these were all addicted people. And they change your perception, and they help you look at the world and realize that if someone can do that, I can certainly do the little tasks that I have at hand each day. So I would say at this point in my life, those are my three biggest influences.
Thank you. Candidate, it's right there. Go ahead, Judge Winkle.
All right, so it's probably no surprise. It's my family is the first influence, and not in any particular order, but I was fortunate enough to know my great-grandparents. They lived until I was about 21 years old. But a big influence was my grandparents, and I'll tell you the reason why. My father went to law school late in life. It was actually down at the Chase Law School is still down at the YMCA building on Central Parkway. So he'd work all day and then go to class for 3 hours every night. So that put a lot of pressure on my mother, and because I had a brother and I had a sister, and I think we were a handful when we were together. And in any event, some of my earliest memories are my dad would go down to law school on the weekends and take my brother and I to study, and we'd study. So I guess I was in law school for about 20 years because I started when I was 10. But he was a big influence, and my grandparents really stepped up. As I said, my parents had 3 kids, and it was a lot on my mother, and she was a great mother as well. Another influence I can think of is one of my teachers when I was in high school, and I'm in a business where you really aren't supposed to be an introvert, but I really am an introvert, and I didn't speak up much. I didn't talk much. I did my work and turned it in, and I think it was my U.S. history teacher. Probably I was a junior, and she pulled me aside and talked to me. And she said, don't hide your light or your candle under a basket. And that really meant a lot to me that someone stepped up, realized I was a shy kid, and told me try to come out of your shell. And so in any event. Those are only 2 of my 3 influences. Thank you. All right, there you go.
Thank you, Judge. John, this is the best question of the night.
Well, I got more questions, so
Yeah.
no.
Wow. Okay, so far. So like everybody else, I have to start with my family first. My parents are exceptional people, really bootstrap people who have lived a life of hard work, of dedication, of true social justice, and of deep kindness. And it's really the values that my parents laid out for me that I work hard every day to instill in my children. I'm so fortunate to have an excellent partner in my husband, Brian. And I do agree with Judge Giz. I do feel like having children really does shape your worldview. And my 2 boys are wonderful. And I work hard every day to set what I think is a good example for them. The next probably major influence in my life I'm going to categorize as excellent education. I was fortunate to have Kristen Gammon as my speech and debate coach in high school, to have Jenny Hopkins as my basketball coach. And these are people that really kind of built me up, but also humbled me, who taught me that everybody is replaceable and that you have to work hard every day if you want to achieve good outcomes in life. But also that, even if I was a little bossy or if I was the loudest kid in class, that was okay, especially as a girl growing up in the 80s and 90s. I was really fortunate to have those mentors at school. Lastly, I would say my clients. I mentioned in my early opening remarks that I was a legal aid lawyer for about a decade. And really, nothing has left maybe as deep of a professional impression on me as the clients that I had who worked so hard every day and who overcame incredible challenges, whether it was having a seriously disabled child or having to work 3 jobs to make ends meet. That really has stuck with me.
All right. Well, Virginia says it's one of your best questions. I'm finding it a very tough question to answer because I've got 2 wonderful living.
Val? I mean, no, I'm kidding.
So I just said opt out. Don't answer. Now I've got 2 wonderful parents who are still with us, and obviously they shaped me in many, many ways beyond probably what I can fully comprehend. And I'm very grateful for that. And my wife, Maureen, and my two boys have obviously influenced me in many ways. I do want to say I've had some great mentors in my legal career. Rob Hudson was my first. I had to walk into his office and tell him that I no longer want to be a management lawyer. I was going to be a union side lawyer. After he had trained me, he took that pretty well. And then David Cook, who is no longer with us, he taught me how to represent labor unions and working people. And then most of my career has been working with Paul Tobias, who lived a very long life to age 91 and practiced more than 60 years, a bit of a living legend, born and raised in Cincinnati and spent almost his entire career in Cincinnati. And he was a leading light, really a pioneer when it came to employment law. The practice had been dominated by either management lawyers or union lawyers, and he developed his own association that's still with us, National Employment Lawyers Association, and that's for plaintiff attorneys. And it really was very important, and he led it. And beyond that, I mean, I knew him before I became his partner, knew of him when I was in law school, and to be his partner for so many years was a real pleasure. He was just about the most positive person you could ever meet. I don't think positivity is a trait that the legal profession cultivates very well. After all, you're going to have some losses over the years, but he was relentlessly positive. He was your biggest cheerleader, and obviously I still miss him and wish he was here to see this.
All right. I've been instructed that we have one question left, because I got some more good ones. So I'm just warning you. All right, let's spin the wheel. Okay, playing a little game show here, all right? Oh, yeah. All right, so justice is supposed to be blind to race, gender, and economic differences of defendants. However, we all have biases. How do you, or how would you keep bias out of the courtroom? You can go first.
First. Yeah. Well, it's an excellent question. It's a very important question that we've heard on the campaign trail, certainly. And obviously, my practice I've dedicated to trying to eradicate bias and discrimination in the workplace on behalf of my clients. So certainly, that's going to be very important to me if I'm elected and have my own courtroom. One, I would say, rather easy thing to do is, as a judge, is be part of anti-bias training that's available. That seems to be a no-brainer. Everybody has their blind spots, and you certainly want a judge to be self-aware of his or hers. So that's an easy thing to do. To piggyback on something that Virginia mentioned, I do think transparency is an important piece of the puzzle here. It should be that a lawyer who's representing clients in common pleas, or a member of the public, should be able to, for each judge to go online and access what they're doing with sentencing, criminal sentencing. Because that is, to me, going into the job, I haven't been a judge yet, but to me, that has to be one of the most challenging things as a judge, is to sentence someone. You usually have some discretion, and I think that it should be data that's available to see what judges are, what sentencing they're handing out for certain offenses, and the situation surrounding them. Certainly, the background of the defendant should be part of it. And my hope is, beyond just transparency, my hope is that the judges will compare their data and information and talk about it, not a current case, but talk about it, and hopefully maybe build more consensus. I know it's always been this way in common pleas and probably throughout the country, that, well, you're in such and such courtroom, well, he's going to sentence the max. The other one's more lenient, and it's always going to be that way to a certain degree. But I think there should be more uniformity, and I'm hoping to be a part of that.
I think that, John, as the question suggests, this is one of the most important things that we should expect from the bench. And my commitment to both to my colleagues as lawyers and to the broader community is to bring an ethic of deep fairness to the bench when elected. And I don't think that fairness is an accident. And actually, Steve touched on some of how it doesn't have to be accidental in his answer. One thing that I would do when elected judge, just like I've done in my role as a leader at City Hall, is to take part in implicit bias training. I also think that juries should watch at least a short video during their jury service about implicit bias. That's something that's been done to great effect in courts around the country and is a national best practice. I also think that as a judge, when giving jury instructions, part of my instructions will be on what implicit bias is so that it's in the front of people's minds, so that they can be aware and hopefully deliver the maximum fairness possible. Like Steve, and like I'd mentioned earlier in my comments, transparency around sentencing data is something structural and significant that really I think judges owe the community, so that there can be true transparency, that it can be known, and that so when judges, especially judges who are elected, are up for re-election, those outcomes can be known and a judge's fairness can be measured based around all of the data that could be brought to bear in situations like that. I think lastly and finally, I think a lot of what fairness means as a practice is really being prepared as a judge. It means being prepared and understanding the facts that are relevant to each case. It means reading briefs and motion pleadings carefully so that you can deliver the best and most fair decision possible because you're informed as a judge.
All right, thank you. Well, I've been a judge for over 20 years, and I'd have to say that I don't believe that I am biased at all. I've taken the implicit bias training numerous times, at least 4 or 5. And I would hope, I mean, like Bernie and Chris and then John, you practiced in front of me, and I expect you would have pointed that out to me if you thought I was biased. I had a horrible 2-week trial with you. Do you remember that?
I remember
Okay,
it well.
Yeah, you won, but it was a horrible trial. I mean, they put me through the
Didn't get paid,
ringer.
but I won, but still,
Yeah.
another story, but yeah.
I see him at the UC football games.
I know.
Anyway, so I would hope that somebody would point it out to me. I mean, if I was doing something racist, or if I was doing something sexist, or if I was doing, just name it. I mean, I would expect that someone would point that out to me. I would, at least I hope they would. And I would never do that to begin with. You know, people don't like the outcomes and especially in criminal cases when they're being sentenced. I was just speaking earlier about, you know, we're all running for judge, and I can't even read some of the comments that people put on my Facebook page. Most of them start with the letter F, but they're all people I sentenced. And finally, somebody came forward and said, well, you know, he must be doing a good job if the criminals don't like him. So in any event, I don't believe that I'm biased in any way. And certainly if I was, I would hope that the attorney or somebody would please point that out to me. All right. Thank you, everybody.
It has been brought up about the implicit bias training. All of the judges, to my knowledge, do it at least once a year. They have it at our annual conference. They always have one. I always take a CJE online. That's a good one. It changes every year, and it's very interesting and it keeps your attention for the 2 hours that you watch it. It's very interesting and informative. But with regard to bias in my courtroom, I feel like Judge Winkler does, which is really every case is individual. Some people's pasts are far worse. Their history is what we call it, their criminal history, than another person's. The legislature gives us the right to use a margin to make the decision as to where we land on a sentence. And in my room, it depends on so many things. It depends on the pre-sentence investigation report. It depends on victims' impact statements. It depends on what their criminal history, that's number one, is their criminal history. And then anything that they may have had in their past that affected that criminal history. I'm not blind to that. And most of the judges on the bench are not blind to that. But there's this perception that and it happens. I'm not lying about that. I mean, everybody knows there's always a judge somewhere that will go overboard. But I think the better way to address that is to have a stopgap to keep that crazy sentence from happening versus infer that every judge out there is biased in some way based on how they sentence.
I think what I will try to promote in my courtroom is an underlying principle of equal justice under the law. And what I mean by that is every person in court deserves to be treated the same. Doesn't matter your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, whatever it may be, you should be looked at and treated specifically by whatever the facts of your case and then what the law says should be applied. That being said, I understand that this is a concern in the community. And I think that as far as, and my background is in education. I was actually a history teacher for a short period of time and graduated with an education degree. I find education to be very important. So I find it's important in my courtroom, not only would I continue to take implicit bias training, but I would have my courtroom and my staff make sure that they were also aware of that, because that's important. Not only is your staff a reflection of you in the community, but you yourself need to be a proper reflection of the community. I also think that the judge would need to be held accountable. So how you make your decisions, the community should know that. The judge should be going into the communities and explaining why, how and why they make the decisions they do. As a judge, I will follow the sentencing factors. When you look at, in criminal cases, when you look at the sentencing factors, that should be what should be followed. I think when you speak to a jury in a criminal case, when you conduct a voir dire, you're always seeking to have that that type of juror that can rid themselves of bias. We do that every day as prosecutors. I do that every day in my life as a prosecutor. I did that as a magistrate. I looked at the case and made my decisions based on the facts and circumstances and the law that should be applied. I'll continue to do that as a judge on the bench.
I agree with many of the things that my colleagues here have stated. Bias is a part of the human condition, and so you have to be intentional about avoiding it. We're all biased in favor of our family, our friends, our sports teams, what part of town we live in. There was one of my mentors years ago who's no longer with us, John Burlew, who was a tremendous trial lawyer in this jurisdiction. And he told me, you know, listen, I judge conduct, not people. And I think that's an overarching principle that every judge should probably keep in the front of his or her mind, so that when you're evaluating facts and applying the law, you're treating everyone equally. So we know bias is part of the human condition. It's how we survive. Tribalism is sort of baked in, and that's where bias is born. But we have to take implicit bias training, as Virginia has stated, and you have to make sure that you have transparency, the transparency. And the third piece is you must collect data. So you collect data on the decisions you make, and then you can Monday morning quarterback, so to speak, and see how you did and how the equity and how equitable you've been from one case to the next. And so those are some of the things that I would employ if successful in combating bias in my courtroom. Thank you.
All right. We're going to give you each 2 minutes to close, but I'm going to take 6 more minutes of your time, and I'll still be on time for the 7 o'clock. Because Judge Winkler made me think about something. When I was in your courtroom for 2 weeks, what I remember is that we had a jury, we had a black defendant, we had me, the black lawyer, and we had one black juror. And it was a long 2 weeks. So unless things have changed, I haven't tried a case in about 8 years, which my understanding is they haven't changed that much. What do we do about getting a more diverse jury pool? Go to you first, Judge Winkler. 1 minute. Everyone's got 1 minute.
Right. Well, it's unfortunate that happened, but it's we have trouble getting people actually to come report for jury duty for various reasons. And I don't know that it's based on race, but those juries are selected randomly by the jury commissioner. The judge, of course, has no say in who shows up for the jury or in that jury pool. And I recall the trial. I don't specifically recall that part of the trial, but the thing is we I've left African-American on a jury that, for instance, there was one fellow that had a prior felony, and you're still not really supposed to sit on a jury if you still have the felony and it's not expunged. And I thought he'd be a good juror, and I left him on, and I got the okay from the attorneys, of course. So I'm not sure, other than, throwing out a wider net, trying to get more people in. There's been talk of using driver's license. That hasn't happened yet.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So I think that it's critical that juries reflect the community that they're serving on. Truly, I do. And Judge Winkler began to touch on it at the end of his answer, but I think that we need a more expansive jury pool, that it should be as expansive as we can under Ohio law, that, the BMV would be a better place to start than registered voters, but that anything that we can do that widens the jury pool, that also makes it frankly easier to serve on a jury, those are things that I would embrace as good public policy.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, second, obviously, Virginia's comment, and I don't know what role judges can play to change the law, or whether we're really in a position to advocate for a change in the law in casting a wider net. But what you report is disappointing. I know I've had a civil trial or two where I thought that it wasn't as problematic as it has been, but I haven't been a judge yet for a day, and I would approach the job with humility. And that's something that would be very important to me, is that we're not having juries where it's dominated by just certain sectors of the community.
Go ahead, Bern.
Like the other candidates stated, I think you need to expand the potential pool of jurors, and how that's accomplished is the difficult part of the problem. This question came up last night. Judge Krause posed it when we were talking to the Deer Park Democratic Club. And logistically, I'm just at a loss of where the money would come from and how you would do it. But expanding into driver's license and Ohio identification cards might be a way. How it actually gets done, I don't know. But that's an idea that can be workshopped if I'm successful, along with the other judges that serve on the Common Pleas General Division bench.
As a trial attorney and being in the courtroom every day and doing these juries, the hardest thing that I hear from jurors and is the conflicts that it has and how difficult it is. And our jury system is one where we kind of have a huge cattle call, and no one knows when they need to be at court, if they should be at court. And it's this very unknown. It's hard to plan your schedules. I think we need to put in place a potential plan so that families anywhere in the community, that they can structure their lives. A lot of hardworking people are unable to sit on a jury because they have children, conflicts with family and children schedules, conflicts with their work schedules. And I see that time and time again. I've seen a very diverse pool as of recent when being in the court, which I think is great for both sides, for both in criminal cases, but the defense and the prosecution side, because we, quite frankly, always have usually a very diverse set of facts on cases. But I would obviously support any type of change to make it more diverse.
Well, in a nutshell, we have been working on this. The Court of Common Pleas the judges have talked about this almost at I'd say at least every other meeting we have. We are discussing how to expand the jury pool. We did look at getting driver's licenses and using those, and then or Ohio ID cards. We were worried about problems we were running into because people aren't at those addresses anymore. So I have my license now, but I moved somewhere and it's hard to find people. There's also the issue of how much jurors are paid. It is quite frankly embarrassing, and people can't afford to sit there all day when their employer doesn't pay them if they're employed for jury duty, or they have children who are they don't have childcare for. There are a million different reasons, but I will tell you on a better note, the last jury I did have in my room about 2 months ago was half African-American, half white. And I was very pleased with, I remember looking over and going, that's really good. That's really good. That's where we're headed. So I'm not quite sure quickly. I'm not sure if that had to do with the jury pool that we actually got. I'm not sure how it landed that way, but it worked out very well.
Since you're on a roll there,
Yep.
I'll let you start with the close.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your time. And if you've been listening to us or watching us, thank you. Some of this can get a little tedious, but hopefully you're all attorneys and you enjoy hearing some of this. I love my job. It is an amazing job. Every day is different, whether it be in the criminal realm or in the civil realm. I like the civil because I love learning new things. I like that every case isn't the same. I like reading about new updates in the law that I may have missed. And I love the criminal because it's fun for the most part. It's stressful at times, but it's fun to interact with the attorneys. It's fun. It's a great job when you're able to actually help a defendant, and nothing is more rewarding than that feeling when a defendant comes through and they're successful. I'm not going to lie, that isn't the majority of the time, but when it happens, it is lovely, and it makes you realize you made a difference in someone's life. It makes you feel good in a way that most jobs don't necessarily make you feel. And it's nice to know that I'm helping my community on a daily basis and making them feel like they're being heard. And that's an important part of it. I hope to stay here for the next 6 years. I feel that I have done a good job, and I hope that on November 5th, you will think of me, and I ask that you will support me and vote for Leslie Giz. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate this time to speak to the panel and also to the members who are watching. My name is Chris Lips, and I do ask for your vote to be your next Common Pleas Court judge. As I said, I live in this community, and I believe an important role of the judiciary is to make our community feel safe. And what I've seen as a prosecutor is that there have been recent decisions and a trend in the courthouse where people in the community are feeling not as safe. They are feeling that the judiciary is not protecting them. And that is a reason that I'm running for this position. I feel that with my 14 years of criminal experience, both as a prosecutor and as a magistrate, has provided me with the ability to make the appropriate decisions when it comes to setting bonds on criminal cases and setting appropriate sentences to those violent offenders who victimize our most vulnerable in our community. I do believe that my experience as a magistrate in the domestic violence court has provided me those skills that are necessary for the bench. I've shown in the past to be, as I said, to take both sides, be a neutral fact finder, and make a decisive decision, all of which is important when being a judge. Again, I greatly would appreciate your consideration. I do have the right experience. I will be firm on crime, and I will be fair and provide equal justice to all in our community. And I'm asking you for your vote on November 5th. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to address your members and prospective voters. I pledge to judge with integrity, independence, and impartiality. As I was attempting to state during my opening statement and introduction, the color of justice in America is green. And so the folks who are people of modest means really don't do as well in the civil or criminal justice system as members of our community who are well-heeled. That's why I do the work that I do. I've been advocating on behalf of indigent clients for nearly 30 years now. I'll celebrate my 30th anniversary on November 14th, which will be shortly after the election. So I hope that on November 5th, you'll consider me, because I will bring a fresh perspective to the Common Pleas bench. It is fundamental fairness and equal justice under law that I will promise you. But I'll bring it from a perspective. We all walk through life based on our life experiences. And I'll be, the poor kid from Avondale who was able to get out of a neighborhood that many people didn't think he would be able to do. I did so. And so I'd like to take those experiences, that insight, and that empathy to the bench. And I believe that public safety and robust due process reside side by side. It's not the either or proposition. And so many of the cases that come before us, we're likely going to be able to help. And if successful, I would like to be one of those judges that helps people on my docket, as well as protecting public safety. Obviously, if folks have committed serious violent crimes, I think you could get 10 judges out of 10 to give them a harsh penalty. That's not really something that varies from judge to judge, in my opinion. So remember Bernard Mundy on November 5th. I would love your support if you like what you've heard.
Yeah, well, thank you all for attending virtually this wonderful discussion. I would, of course, just be honored to be elected Hamilton County Common Pleas Judge. And when we've been talking about judges as a community leader, I'm very passionate about that. And that's based in part in this terrific experience I had as a community council president where we desegregated our local elementary school. I was proud to lead that effort, and it truly was inspiring about what we can do in Cincinnati and throughout the county. On a perhaps more specific note to the lawyers who are watching this, like any lawyer who's practiced a long time as I have, you sometimes wonder, why doesn't a judge do certain things that would be easier for the lawyers? I'm definitely going to take a customer service approach when it comes to that. For example, I think that a case management conference on the civil docket, that should be a meeting with the judge, not a phone call to the judge's staff. I've had so many cases that were able to be resolved because we met with the judge and you met with the other lawyer. I think that doesn't happen enough. Can get on my soapbox about this, but since COVID, I think lawyers too often are missing the opportunities to meet in person, to me, which is a critical part of being a lawyer. And particularly in a wonderful community that we have in Cincinnati, I want to foster that in-person discussion. So that's very important to me, as well as I don't think you should be a guessing game about when you're getting a decision from a judge. So many lawyers I know have had cases where, gosh, we haven't heard for months or a year. That should never happen. I guess it's revolutionary, but I'm hoping as a practice to actually tell the lawyers, this is when you might expect a decision. And yes, you may reach out to me if you don't have a decision timely. So many lawyers are actually scared. I think lay people are surprised by that, scared to inquire of a judge about a timely decision. So I will take a customer service approach when it comes to managing my docket. I look forward to it. Again, I'd be honored to be elected, and thank you for your support.
Thanks again to the CBA for this opportunity, and to all the attorneys and community members watching. Virginia Talent, running for the Court of Common Pleas General Division in the field race. I've spent my entire career as a dedicated public servant, and it's that ethic and that administrative acumen, that trial advocacy expertise, and fundamentally that community-focused leadership that I'll bring to the bench when elected. And I want to leave you with 3 thoughts about when you go to the ballot box and you're picking your choice, what you can expect from me. And the first is fairness. I told you in my earlier remarks that fairness is not an accident, that it has to be a practice, and it will be a practice every day in my courtroom. And that is fundamental and essential to the kind of judge that I will be when elected. The second is efficiency. So I talked about administrative acumen. For all the lawyers listening, what you can expect from me is trial date certainty, ruling decision certainty. You can expect not just judgment entries, but clear, reasoned opinions. That's what you can expect. You can expect for me to work on Fridays. You can expect for me to have hearings after 2 o'clock in the afternoon and to be available to do my role to make decisions. I'll even make decisions around discovery disputes. Third and finally, I want to emphasize my commitment to smart community safety. I'm someone who has a track record working with the police and working with the community and doing it seamlessly. And we have a courthouse and we have the opportunity to bring so many important resources to bear for victims, for the families of victims. We need to do more of that. We need to have a courthouse that's community-centered so that we can deliver the best, most effective justice possible for the community. Virginia Talent for the Common Pleas Court.
Thank you. Well, thank you, John, and the Cincinnati Bar Association for having me here tonight. As I said at the beginning, I've been a judge for over 20 years. I think I've seen every kind of case anyone could possibly imagine. As I said, I presided over more than 30,000 cases, but Judge Giz brought this to mind. There were certain instances, and I'm going to give you 3 examples of all 3 were criminal cases, and all 3 of these people were addicted to heroin, which is a low-level felony. And in any event, as I've been a kid, I have twin daughters, and they like pizza. So the pizza man came to my door, and of course, opened it up. I opened it up, and he said, "Are you Judge Winkler?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. Am I?" Because sometimes people approach you, you don't really want to answer that question because you don't know what they're going to do. And of course, I said, "Yeah, I am." And then he said, "Yeah, I recognize you. I remember you. I was in front of you." And as I said, I put him into treatment for heroin, and he was very grateful. He hugged me, which is a little uncomfortable because I didn't remember him particularly, but he remembered me. Another was I was at a restaurant with my family, and it was a female waitress, same thing, and she again thanked me. But the most, the one I remember the most is a fellow actually came back to my courtroom. He was again heroin addict. He lost his house. He lost his family. He lost everything. He was living under one of the bridges, one of the interstate overpasses, and he came back to talk to me. I was actually in my courtroom, and I remembered him. And again, he thanked me for putting him in treatment. People do not want to get off heroin. Heroin's the best thing that they've ever felt or experienced, and they don't want to get off of it. So it's very difficult, very, very difficult. But in any event, I said, why did you think it was a good idea to try heroin? And he said, well, because my brother did. But in any event, people have come back that I've incarcerated and put into treatment and thanked me for that, which I'm grateful for. Thank you, John.
Well, that concludes our forum for the Common Pleas Court. We want to thank you all for participating, and good luck to everybody.
Welcome to the 2024 Judicial Candidate Forums. My name is Lisa McPherson. I'm the Executive Director of the Cincinnati Bar Association. I'd like to start by thanking our judicial candidates for being here tonight and participating. I'd also like to thank our participating forum partners, the League of Women Voters, the Cincinnati Association, and the Women's City Club. Our shared mission is to help build a strong community, and educating voters is a step toward that goal. This forum covers the candidates running for judicial openings on the 1st District Court of Appeals. There are 4 judicial seats open, and the Court of Appeals is one of 12 appellate districts in the state of Ohio. The court hears appeals from the trial courts of all of Hamilton County. Now, as we begin our dialogue, let me introduce John Williams. John has spent his entire legal career in Cincinnati. He is a past president of the Cincinnati Bar Association and is Associate General Counsel for First Group of America. And as soon as I give him this mic, we'll begin.
Good evening. Welcome all. We're gonna get right into it here. You all have probably recently viewed the poll that the Cincinnati Bar Association puts out. And I've got a question for you about the poll. I know I'm gonna take a wild guess. I'm pretty sure you all have looked at it. And if you haven't, you can answer this question regardless. You know, the poll's I forgot. Let's do the intro. 2 minutes. I'm sorry. Forgot you did that last time. I wasn't here. All right. Let's start with Judge Zayas.
Thank you. All righty. Well, hello, John. Thank you for the bar for putting this together and really seeking to try to provide information to the public. It's been a great honor serving everyone at the Court of Appeals now for nearly 8 years. And for someone like myself, I grew up, my family circumstances were very, very difficult. My neighborhood was very difficult. There wasn't much that was expected of me. And finding myself at the Court of Appeals, when I was elected, I knew that our county didn't want more of the same. And that's what I set out to make sure that, that I really provided. One of the concerns that I heard from the bar was a concern of outcome determinative cases and judges that not feeling like they had a fair chance and that the outcome was already going to be determined. So for me, it's really digging deep into every case and making sure that the law is really followed and cases are decided at the Court of Appeals, whether there's an error, whether there isn't an error, whether it needs to be corrected, by really looking at what happened at the trial court and looking at that in the context of the law. It's also really important to talk about process. One of the biggest changes that this court has made over the course of the years, starting in 2017, is providing many more opportunities for people that are self-represented and for attorneys to be able to fully present their cases to our court. So it's a real honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Any more?
All right. Good evening. Thank you, John. And thank you to the CBA for this opportunity to give a little information about my background. I'm a first-time candidate, and so I certainly cannot take for granted that people know who Rich Moore is. And so I appreciate the opportunity to show up and convey to not only the members of the CBA, but all the voting public, a little background information about me. I think it's incredibly important that candidates show up for events like this so that they can meet the voters and the voters can get their background and an opportunity to answer questions that are put to them so that the voters have a little better understanding about their background. And in that regard, I've been a lawyer here in town for the last 30 plus years. I've practiced at 2 of the biggest firms in town, where I've been a partner at both. That opportunity has given me a chance not only to get some of the best training that a lawyer can get starting their practice, but has also given me an opportunity to engage and go up against some of the best advocates and hone my skills as an advocate and trial attorney over those 30 years. But in addition to my work as a lawyer, I think I've demonstrated a commitment to this community through my public service work. I've been board chair of what was known as the Urban League of Greater Cincinnati, now the Urban League of Greater Southwest Ohio. I've been board chair of the Mercantile Library Association and several others, including a member of the board of the CBA and the CBA Foundation. So I think that commitment is demonstrated by my actions, and this opportunity to serve on the Court of Appeals is just a continuation of that. And I look forward to being able to serve and bring justice to the Court of Appeals. So Rich Moore, candidate for the First District Court of Appeals. Thank you.
Judge Nestor.
Good evening, John. Good evening, Bar. Thank you for this opportunity. I am Terry Nestor. I am currently a judge on the Court of Common Pleas. I'm running for the First District Court of Appeals. I have been an attorney in Cincinnati for 29 years, not quite 30. I grew up in Cincinnati. My family, my childhood home was in Mount Washington, Madeira, and I've been in Clifton since graduating from the University of Cincinnati College of Law in 1995. After graduation, I served as a law clerk in the Court of Common Pleas. After that, I worked in private practice, basically defending professional liability cases before I joined the city of Cincinnati. I joined the city of Cincinnati as an assistant city solicitor on the civil side. I worked my way through the ranks of the city of Cincinnati, spent 15 years there, became the chief trial counsel for the city of Cincinnati, the deputy city solicitor, and I was the acting city solicitor in 2014. In 2018, I ran for the Court of Common Pleas. I have been on for a single term. It has been my privilege and honor to serve on that court, and I want to take my experience as a trial court judge to the Court of Appeals. I'll point out to everybody who's watching that we are here and we are pleased to be here. And I agree with Rich Moore that it's very important that the people in this audience hear from the candidates who will be representing them on the courts of Hamilton County. So this opportunity is important, and I hope that everybody listens closely tonight. And I wish our opposition was here because I think it would be helpful to hear from all of the candidates. On the Court of Common Pleas, I've had over the past 6 years, over 20 jury trials, over 20 bench trials, and it has been my great pleasure to serve as the Veterans Court Judge for Hamilton County Felony Court. Thank you.
Judge Krause.
Hello, everyone. My name is Candace Kraus. I was elected to the First District Court of Appeals in 2018, and I took the bench in February of 2019. So I'm finishing up my first term. Prior to taking the bench, I was a practicing lawyer. I was a litigator. I graduated from Ohio State Law, and actually I'm not from Cincinnati. I grew up in West Virginia. I went back to my home state to Wheeling, West Virginia, to clerk for a federal district court judge in the Northern District. And then I had taken and passed the Ohio bar, and I came back to Ohio and I started my litigation career here. I was always good at research and writing. That was a strong point of mine. I was on Law Journal and Moot Court in law school. But I wanted to learn how to try cases. And so I got in with a couple small law firms here in Cincinnati, and that's what I started doing. I started trying cases in state and federal court, doing trials and appeals. And my litigation experience has a wide range from various types of civil work, but the one constant through my career has been criminal defense work, which is something that in law school I never thought that I would do. I initially thought I wanted to be a prosecutor, but I ended up loving doing that work. And so I took that work. I went to a 50-lawyer firm for about 3 years, and then I ended up leaving that firm with 4 other lawyers, and we started our own law firm in 2013. And so that's what I was doing before I took the bench. I'm really proud of the work that we have done since I've taken the bench in the First District. My colleagues and I and our amazing administrative staff have made some significant improvements to the efficiency, transparency, and I think overall fairness of the Court of Appeals. And I'm running for re-election because I would like to continue doing that work.
Thank you. So I'll go back to the original question I was going to ask about our judicial poll. The Cincinnati Bar Association Judicial Candidates Poll covers 6 categories: administrative diligence, communication skills, community engagement, integrity, along with impartiality and objectivity. It also covers legal experience and also temperament. Where do you think you rate the highest? Not what the folks rated you, but where you rate the highest, and which category would you want to improve upon? And I will start with Judge Krause.
So it's where I think I rank the highest.
So rate yourself.
I would say it lines up with how I did on the poll, actually. I think I did best in professionalism and temperament, and I think I rank pretty high there. As far as improvement, it does say community engagement, and I would say probably that I could improve more on that one. I am a member of the end of court with the Bar Association, but as far as local community, I think I could probably do more. I am involved in some more statewide committees, but I think that this seems to be pretty spot on as far as where I rank myself.
All right. Judge Nestor.
So as a common pleas court judge, it is very important, I think, to have a high ranking in professionalism and temperament, because you are running a courtroom every day. So I am pleased that I received high rankings there. And I think that is where I would receive the highest rankings based on how I run my courtroom. I run my courtroom in mind with my own experience as an attorney, how I would like to be treated by a judge. And that respect goes both ways. And I think it's reflected in my score in regards to professionalism and temperament. The thing that I think is most important as a judge, whether you're a trial court judge or any kind of judge really, is your impartiality, objectivity, integrity. So I think it's always the goal to score as high as possible on that particular category, because that is also a reflection on your ability to hear both sides and to have the fundamental fairness, both procedural fairness and substantive fairness on the decision, so that at the end, even the losing party feels like they have been heard in a fair forum with a fair process where they got their day in court, and they can leave satisfied, even if they're the losing party, that they have had the result that comports with fundamental justice and fundamental due process. So those are the two things that I think are most important, and I'm pleased with the scores that I received in each of those categories, but I think, of course, you can always do better in every category.
Thanks. Candidate Moore?
I think I agree with Judge Krause. I think that the survey pretty much hit it on the head in terms of where I would evaluate my strengths. Professionalism and temperament is where I, looks like I came out the highest. And I think that I've tried to demonstrate that those characteristics throughout my career. And that, again, going back to what I said in the intro, that was kind of the training that I was taught coming up by, more senior lawyers, how a lawyer behaves, how a lawyer presents him or herself in different circumstances. And I think I've tried to guide my career with respect to some of those trainings. So I think that certainly is I'm pleased with the fact that others see that as a strength of mine. I think in terms of weaknesses, administrative diligence, I think that somehow they know I don't get my timesheets on time all the time. So I think they hit the nail on the head there as well. So that is certainly something that that I can continue to improve upon. I also am proud of my community engagement. I touched on a few of those things during the introduction, but I think my involvement in many of the nonprofit organizations here in town is, again, it demonstrates my commitment to this community, my understanding of what it is to be a lawyer. I think that's part of the professionalism, that we have to serve the communities where we practice. And I've tried to do that throughout my career and demonstrate servant leadership with my involvement in these organizations. So I'm certainly proud of that. And I think these surveys hopefully reflect the body of work I've tried to put together during the course of my 30 years of practice. Thank you.
Judge Zayas?
So with regard to where I see myself ranking highest, and it turns out that it is reflective of the survey, was I would say integrity, impartiality, and objectivity would be the number one thing that I value out of the six. In fact, when I first came into my seat, one of the decisions that I made immediately is that I would never look to see who the trial judge is, nor who the attorneys are in representing any case that I'm reviewing, whether I'm the authoring judge or whether I'm not the authoring judge. I want to make sure that I keep myself, I call it, as clean as possible, so that cases are truly being decided by what's presented by the attorneys, what it is that the law demands of us, what it is that occurred at the trial court level. The other area is community engagement. I was troubled. I used to call my court the mystery court. And the reason I called it the mystery court is because it seemed to me that the public was not informed. We didn't do a good job in informing the public on where we were, who we were, and what we did. There's still a perception that we are in the courthouse. And I think it's really important in order for there to be accountability that everyone in our community, as much as possible, knows those things. And because of where I come from and where I've landed in life, it's been very important to me to ensure that that I'm working with young people so that they can see themselves in leadership positions as well. As far as improvement, administrative, that's one area that I really rely on the court administration to do. We have great court administrators. It's the one area that I have been less interested in my tenure as a judge. I just feel like if I need to focus on my job and being an excellent judge, and any time left over after that really goes to the community.
Thank you. So back to Judge Zayas. What are your 3 major influences in your life and why? People, places, or could be whatever. It could be a
In
rock,
question,
whatever,
like,
whatever.
what are
but-
my major influences as a judge
No, in your life, your life.
in my
What
life?
yeah.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if it's very different, but I mean, one thing that has really influenced who I've become have been the clients that I represented as an attorney. I represented everything from new business owners to very wealthy people, but also people that were indigent, people that were facing very difficult hardships, people that were really fighting for the integrity of their life. And seeing the hardships that they went through and the significance of the legal system in their lives has really directed me very strongly on who I was as an attorney and who I am as a judge. I would say the values that my mother has installed in me. My mom is someone that never even finished 8th grade, and all she wanted for her children was a fair chance. And she taught us the value of education, the value of community service, and the value of really working hard, and as she would put it, earning every dollar that we have in our pocket. The other influence that that really has driven me, because we all have difficult times in life, times where we have a hurdle that we're trying to overcome. And there's been people that have really inspired me, people that have faced very difficult hardships in their lives, and have really are the same people that have even put stepping stones in the path that I've been able to walk on. And I look at those people and realize that, well, if they overcame the challenges that they have faced, that I too will be able to overcome my challenges. Those would be the 3 major influences in my life.
Candidate Moore.
All right, I'm gonna count my folks as 2. So my mom and dad obviously were fundamental in forming my attitudes, characteristics, strengths, even weaknesses. And I think that is absolutely at the top of the list. My folks grew up in a time when, segregation was the rule of the land. My dad served in the segregated Navy. My mom was one of the first set of teachers to help desegregate Pleasant Ridge Elementary School as a teacher. But the thing that they taught me was that there's no need to be bitter or angry about it. You work. That's how you address those issues of mistreatment, and you earn everything that you want. And that's why, again, I am glad that I have an opportunity to try to earn the vote by being here tonight and not assume that I'm entitled to anything. But I have to earn every vote that I might get in this election. So I appreciate the opportunity to present my background and experience in this forum to the voters of Hamilton County. But the next, what I'll count as the 3rd, are what I'll call my level 3 friends. There's a philosopher that talks about levels of friendship, and the level 3 friends are friends that you don't necessarily hang out with, you don't have fun with, but these are people that you want to respect you, that when you see them, that you want them to look at you and say, you're doing okay. And there are more people than I can name that are in that category. And those are the people that continue to push me and help me to strive to do better. And so I think the 2 parents in the category of friends are the ones that have had the most influence on my life.
Judge. I'm gonna-
All right, I'm going to give you three categories of influence. I think we're all influenced heavily by our family. So in my family, my mom was also a teacher. She was also a coach. My father worked in corporate America. And my wife, Bridget, owns a small business here in Cincinnati. And I have two kids who are recent graduates of the Ohio State University, and they live in Chicago now, and I miss them very much. Along with my sisters who are in Seattle, they are categorically the biggest influence in my life. And my father's passed away, but I know that he would be very proud that I've become a judge, and he'd be very proud that I even ran for public office. The second category of people are my professional colleagues and friends. I've been very fortunate to work as an assistant city solicitor in City Hall, which produces a lot of friendships, and it produces a lot of insight into local politics. And it was really the place where I got the initiative to run for public office. I don't know that I would have run for public office, but for the spirit of City Hall and the friends and colleagues that I've worked with and for at the city of Cincinnati. And then maybe this is the same thing, but the other influence on my life that I think has been very big is just the city of Cincinnati and working for the city of Cincinnati, living in the city, growing up in the suburbs, coming to Clifton for law school, staying in the city, working for the city, and being part of the fabric of the politics of our city and the progress of our city over the last 20 years has been remarkably influential on my life as someone working for the city, now working as a judge and seeing the things that happen in and around not just our city, but all of Hamilton County has been a great influence on my life.
Rouse.
So my three biggest influences, first of all, I'll say my parents. My father was in the Army as an officer stationed in Germany when he met my mother. And they got married after knowing each other for 3 months and came back here. And my dad went to college with the GI Bill, and my mother, who had never been to college, said, well, I want to go too. So she went to college. They ended up both getting their masters, and education was always something very important to them. My mother became a public school teacher, and they always pushed me academically and pushed me to study hard and to get into college. That was very important to them. My father did always tell me that the one thing that he wanted to be sure that I had was independence, that I knew how to take care of myself, and that I did. And he actually told me that you're not dependent on a man to take care of you. So I always had that encouragement from my parents, and I really appreciated it. Second influence is ballet. I studied classical ballet very seriously from a young age, and went to North Carolina School of the Arts twice, once on scholarship while I was in high school. And so I think just having a passion as a kid and that discipline just, gives you something to live for and care about. And it just really gave me a lot of drive growing up. And then my third influence, biggest influence, I would say, I would have to say, is my mentor, my longtime mentor, Marty Pinellas, who's a lawyer here in town. I started working for him when I was about 4 years out of law school, and we worked together ever since, and actually became law partners in 2013. Through him, I joined the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and I was able to meet a lot of amazing lawyers that really, really care about criminal justice reform. And so I would say Marty Pinellas is one of my bigger influences.
Thank you. I think that Judge Zayas mentioned keeping things clean as possible. So the next question is, scrutiny of the Supreme Court has intensified conversations about judicial impartiality and ethics. How do you plan to ensure impartiality and uphold legal ethics in your rulings, Judge Nestor?
Well, unlike, for example, the U.S. Supreme Court, we are all subject to the Ohio ethical rules and the judicial canons. So in regards to any ethical issue that comes in front of me, I make the effort to not only consult with the attorneys who typically have brought it to my attention in the trial court, but also if it's a live question and I need resources, I call the good people at our bar association who have an ethics hotline who can then assist me if I have a question that I cannot resolve or I have something extremely urgent that needs resolution. Now, I imagine that that urgency is felt more strongly in the trial court when that ethical issue can actually come to light during, for example, a trial proceeding, and there has to be an immediate decision. So ensuring that that is done properly is sometimes part of the trial court judge's role. If elected to the first district, I know that they have the same or similar issues may come up, but they probably come up in the typical fashion that the appellate court deals with legal issues. That is, everything that happens in the trial court happens really fast. And you have to make a determination pretty quickly because people are standing in front of you, perhaps awaiting a trial decision. In the appellate court, you have a little bit of a different standard because you know that people are going to be able to bring it to the attention of the court and possibly brief the issue, and you can have a more thoughtful discussion or determination before you make some sort of ethical ruling. But in that regard, it's important to note that the Ohio, every judge is bound by the rules of professional responsibility and the judicial canons. And we have the responsibility to enforce those, not only for the attorneys who are appearing in front of us, but also amongst ourselves.
Judge Krause.
Well, ethics and professionalism has always been an absolute priority for me from the time that I was asked to help the Ohio Supreme Court create a list of do's and don'ts for prosecutors and defense lawyers. But I was also, after I became a judge, asked to serve on the Ohio Board of Professional Conduct as a commissioner. And I was appointed by Justice Donnelly, and I'm currently serving my second term. And I have to say that I'm very, very proud to be on that board with the group of people that are on that board. And, we deal with judicial ethics and lawyer ethics on a regular basis. And it's certainly something that is at the forefront of my mind because this is one of the things I volunteer my time to do monthly. And so there's a lot of resources that we as judges have with the Board of Professional Conduct to ensure that we stay within our ethical boundaries.
Thank you. Candidate Moore.
Thank you. Obviously, these are important requirements of a lawyer and particularly a judge. As part of my service that I talked about before, one of the things I've done is to teach as an adjunct at the College of Law, and I taught legal ethics for several semesters. And what I tried to convey to my students is the importance of maintaining your reputation because it is so critical in this profession, and to make sure that they appreciate that it takes years to develop your reputation and only moments to ruin it, and to try to make sure that they understand the importance of complying with those rules of ethics that govern our profession. And what I've tried to do during the course of my career is to, abide by that saying, straight, not straightened, to try to make sure that I carry myself and conduct myself in a manner that's consistent with the ethical requirements, not only the ethical requirements that are part of the code, but just acting in a way that is ethical and above board, being honest and being direct with adversaries and other people that you encounter. I think it's so important to developing your relationship and reputation in the profession. So with respect to maintaining ethics as a judge, I think that is just a continuation of what I've tried to do over the last 30 plus years. Thank you.
Ms. Ice.
All judges set rules by nature of their function, and I think it's really important, and I've always acknowledged that judges also have to be rule followers. And it's important to absorb that the rules apply to us as well, and that we are to adhere to those rules. Because really the undermining of the integrity of the court is an incredibly dangerous thing because it results in the public losing confidence in the courts. And the courts is the one branch of the government that should be independent and must be independent. In the Court of Appeals, maintaining a sense of open-mindedness, not determining a case or prejudging a case, but always seeking for the right answer and being willing to listen and to learn and to think with the goal of always getting to the right answer. The other thing I think that has been very important to me as a judge is acknowledging that we're human beings, that there is implicit bias. And so my team and I, we've taken this on very seriously, and we've taken it on as our own personal path. So every year, we start off the year with conversations on this topic, and we set out on what it is that we seek to accomplish in the coming year and how we're going to work together in order to do that. Thank you.
So candidate Moore, what do you plan, if you're elected, what do you plan to bring to the court?
I mean, I think what I bring to the court is the perspective of 30 years in private practice. And I think that manifests itself in the need for efficiency. I think it manifests itself in the need to work hard. I think it manifests itself in the understanding that every day you are tested, and every day you have to demonstrate your capabilities, and every day you have to demonstrate your not only desire to be there, but the fact that you have earned the place at this in this case, the bench. So I think all of those things that I have learned and had to demonstrate in private practice will help me in the Court of Appeals, not only dealing with the legal issues, the writing, obviously, that's part of the day-to-day, but I think the attitude that comes with having to start over every January 1st. We start at zero in terms of revenue, in terms of billable hours. So every year we have to prove ourselves once again. Frankly, every day we have to prove ourselves once again. So I think, again, going back to what I said before, this idea that nothing is given, everything has to be earned is what I plan to bring to the court if elected.
And same question to you, Judge Nestor.
So there is currently one trial court judge who has been elected to the appellate court judge who is not running for the appellate court. So if I'm elected, the thing that I would bring, most importantly, is my trial court experience. The Court of Common Pleas is obviously all felonies and every civil dispute over $15,000. So it is most of the serious criminal cases and the high value civil litigations that come out of the Court of Common Pleas, and I have the experience of a trial court judge to add to the experience of the current appellate court. And I think it's important that the appellate court have people who have actually sat in the trial court, because while the process of the appeal is basically a record review, sometimes that record review can be informed by being in the actual crucible of trial. I think it's a great advantage to be a trial lawyer, to be a trial judge, and I think it's a great advantage to have been a trial judge, to be an appellate court judge. So I think I bring that particular talent to the First District. I'm hopeful to add that experience to the First District, and I'm hopeful to add the experience that I've had as a trial lawyer on the civil side to the experience of the First District Court of Appeals. I think I have more jury trial experience on the civil side than perhaps anyone that is currently involved in either running for or on the First District Court of Appeals. I have tried wrongful death cases. I've had jury trials in Claremont County, Hamilton County, Butler County. I've had appeals in the First District, the 12th District, the 10th Districts. I've argued in front of the Ohio Supreme Court, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. All of that experience will inform my role at the First District Court of Appeals.
And not that I was avoiding Judge Zayas or Judge Krause, but you both are already there. Since you're already there, what did you guys bring to the court? Who would like to go first on that one? Judge Krause?
The question was, since we're there, what?
Since you both are already on the Court of Appeals, what did you bring to the court?
So what I brought to the court was a lot of what Judge Nestor was talking about is trial experience. I tried a lot of jury trials as a lawyer, and I think that anyone who wants to be a judge should have trial experience, should know their way around a courtroom, should have picked juries, knows how to litigate. But I also think that anyone that wants to be an appellate judge needs to have done appeals, because it's a very different animal than trying cases. And I did that as well. I did appeals in state and federal court. So what I did bring, though, is I didn't just get elected and say, okay, I'm here, we're just gonna deal with the status quo. I got elected from the outside looking in, I saw changes that I wanted to make. Once I got in, I saw a lot of changes that I thought we should make. And so with the help of my colleagues, with the help of some fantastic staff, we have great administrative staff at the Court of Appeals, we are constantly looking for ways to improve the court, whether it's amending the local rules, whether it's starting a mediation program like we did. We were one of the only courts in Ohio, appellate courts in Ohio that didn't have one, improving our internship program, modernizing our technology, putting cameras in our courtroom so that people can view our arguments online anytime they want to, increasing the transparency of the court, cutting our case backlog. All of these things we started doing as soon as I got elected, and I'm not going to take credit for it by myself because I worked with my colleagues in doing it. But I really love being in an environment of people where we're constantly looking around, trying to think, how can we make things better? And I really felt, unfortunately, like a lot of times once somebody gets elected, they just kind of sink into the status quo and forget that what their job is to serve the public.
Judge Zayas?
When I was elected in 16, one of the things that I brought to the court was what I call my engineering brain. So I'm actually a trained engineer. I have a degree in computer science, and I came to Cincinnati to work for P&G as an IT manager. And so I thrive in the complexity of things, which really makes the Court of Appeals very fun for me. I also brought with me my experience. I have the experience of working in the biggest firm in Colorado. I was an intellectual property litigator. And so I worked with people, helping them protect their ingenuity and their hard work. And then my family's relocation didn't work out. That brought me back to Cincinnati. And I took what I thought was a temporary gig with the public defender's office. And at that point is when I really started to truly live the catalyst that brought me to law school, of wanting to be next to people in their most difficult moments. And then I ultimately hung on my own shingle, built a federal practice from the ground up. I don't even have a cousin 3 times removed, never mind in Cincinnati, in Ohio. I have me and my 3 kids. And at that point, they were little ones. So on my reputation of, hey, if you have a difficult immigration case, take it to Maryland. Not only will she figure it out if there's a way, but if there's not a way, she will be honest with you. And I built a thriving practice representing companies and investors and asylees, and took cases, all the way up, did a lot of appellate cases up to the Sixth Circuit. I also brought with me a sense of understanding that accountability and access is very, very important. So one of the things that I spearheaded was our manual that provides from A to Z everything you need to know at the Court of Appeals, and bringing our court into community forums so that people have access to us and don't have to just come to our court in order to see what we do, and and to really put our feet to the fire. Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Got a lot of questions here, but we're down to one more question according to our moderator, well, the other moderator, time-wise. So Do judges have an obligation to improve public understanding of the courts? If so, how should they carry out that obligation? Candidate Moore, why don't you go first?
Yes, I think judges absolutely have an obligation to increase the understanding of the public of the court system. And I think that one of the hopes that I have, if elected, is to take the opportunity to use the position as a bully pulpit to get out in the community and talk to both the youngest students who can possibly comprehend what we're conveying in terms of our court system and our system of government and our system of democracy, all the way up to fully grown adults. Because what I have noticed while campaigning is there is a misunderstanding or lack of understanding by lay people with respect to how our court system works. And I find myself constantly trying to explain to citizens how our court system works and how it interacts and the balance of power and things like that. So I think it absolutely is important that judges are out in the community explaining these concepts to citizens and making sure that they understand the importance of the court and the importance of the people that serve on the court. And forums like this, I think, are a great opportunity for judges to get in front of the public and discuss that role. So, yes.
Judge Ice?
Absolutely. And I think, each judge should do it in a way, in a forum in which they have passion. So for me, one of my biggest passions is working with young people. And my goal is to really empower them to see themselves in my shoes or in a different career path, but nonetheless in a leadership in an authority position. But it also empowers them to really to vote and to be civically engaged, because by seeing someone that comes from a perhaps not your typical background to find themselves on the Court of Appeals, and particularly being the only Latina who's ever been elected to a Court of Appeals in Ohio, it allows young people to say, well, golly, then whatever it is that I want to do, that I can do that too. But I also think it's important to be very open and accessible to the whole community. So one of the things that I'm known for is when I go to community meetings and even when I'm not campaigning, I actually bring copies of my decision with me. I bring decisions that I've written. I bring dissents that I've written. And oftentimes people that are in the audience will read them and then come and ask me questions. And I really enjoy that, because at the end of the day, we are elected. So while I don't see myself as a politician, we are elected. And that not only should we be accountable, but the reality is that there are, different judges and the skill sets are different. And so it's also a way of empowering people to be able to more effectively determine who are the judges that they want represented. So even if they never come to court, but if someone that they cares about comes to court, that they truly feel that that person is going to have a fair chance. Thank you.
Judge Nestor?
So earlier, Judge Zayas said that the First District or the Court of Appeals is kind of a mystery court. And I think it's true of all of our courts. Even for lawyers who are not litigators, there is a mystery component of what happens in the courthouse, whether it's our 1000 Main Street or the Federal District Court or the First District or the Sixth Circuit, which is here. And I think we all have a responsibility to make sure that shroud of mystery is lifted as much as possible. When you're a judge, it starts really, for me, in the courtroom, because a lot of times, whether it's the defendant, the witness, the victim, the victim's family, there's a lot of confusion about what is happening. And just explaining the process to people in the courtroom is an important component of procedural fairness, which I think is fundamental in any court. So I also think that, once you do that in the courtroom, it becomes easier to do that in the settings of community councils, community events, making sure that our courts go out into the community. I know that I believe the First District and the Ohio Supreme Court have held off-site sessions where they've actually held court in different settings, high schools, colleges. Things like that are very important for not just young people, but everybody in the community to see how a court functions and how it affects their lives. And doing that in a way that brings people into the courtroom or takes the courtroom out to the community, I think is fundamental. And that education is part of the civic obligation of anybody who serves in public office, but in particular of a judge who is responsible for enforcing the laws that we have collectively chosen to make a part of our social order.
Judge Krause?
I love going around talking about our courts and teaching people about our legal system in Ohio. One of the things that was interesting to me when I ran in 2018 is I would go to different groups and talk about the Court of Appeals, and I would think that people were going to be very bored. What I found is that people were not bored. They were really interested because they didn't know anything about our Ohio legal system. And in fact, in 2018, when I was campaigning, I became known for being the candidate that walked around with this big poster board that had a diagram of the Ohio court system. And people, I went to anything that I could when I was campaigning, and when people would ask me to talk at any event, I would come. I'd bring my poster board and they would actually take a photograph of it and put it on Facebook. And it was just a really fun experience to go around and educate people about our courts. And I still do that. I meet teachers who ask me to come and speak to their students, and I'm always happy to go to high schools. Of course, I'm an adjunct at the UC College of Law for various classes. I go in as a guest lecturer. I'm going to be teaching a trial advocacy class next fall or next semester. But yeah, anytime I get the opportunity to do a CLE, to speak to people, whether it's lawyers or just, I love talking to people that aren't lawyers, to be honest with you. I go and I do it. My mother in her active adult community has a women's group. They asked me to come speak to them about women in the law and the legal system. And I was happy to do that as well. And I think people are always just really interested because it seems to be the one branch of government that is an actual mystery to people, and people want to learn more about.
All right, so we're going to give you each 2 minutes to close, and I think I'll go right back to Judge Krause. Oh, unless you need a minute. You good?
Good.
Okay. I mean,
Thank you for having me. Thank you for moderating and asking some really good questions. I am running for reelection after finishing up my first term at the First District Court of Appeals. I can tell you that this has been such an amazing experience. You know, I was an advocate for so many years, and being a judge now is such an honor and such an immense responsibility that I do not take lightly. I work hard every day to be professional, to have the temperament, to have the integrity and impartiality that I think everyone expects of a judge. I love digging into the cases. I love learning new areas of the law, which is what we do on the Court of Appeals. It's always a new area, always something new to research and learn about. And I try to come to the best decision that I can under the law. But what I'm most proud of is the work that we have done to improve the court. I think that our court is working so well, and every day we're looking for new ways to make it better. We always are asking for the public and the members of the bar. If you have suggestions, please let us know, because we work for you and we're trying to just make the court work as well as we can. And so it's been a true honor to serve the people of Hamilton County as a judge on the court. And I do hope that you will consider supporting me for reelection this year. Thank you.
Judge Nestor.
Thank you, John. It's been really an honor and privilege to be on the Court of Common Pleas. And I want to take that experience to our Court of Appeals. I have worked as a public servant since joining the city of Cincinnati in 2003, being elected in 2018. During the course of my time as a trial court judge, I've had the experience of being our Veterans Court judge for a felony court in Hamilton County. That has been an extremely rewarding experience. So serving as a judge was not something that I expected when I was in law school. I expected to be a trial lawyer and appear before judges. And some of the reasons that I originally ran for judge was because I was frustrated with some of the quality of justice that my client or clients were getting in the Hamilton County Courthouse. I think that the Hamilton County Courthouse has changed dramatically over the last really 12 years, and there's been a fundamental change. And that fundamental change has also happened since Judge Zayas joined the First District Court of Appeals. I think in November, we have the opportunity to continue change and progress, or we have kind of a situation where people are asking you to go back. I want to join the First District Court of Appeals so we can continue the progress of justice and equality in Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I know that my work as a trial court judge is unique in terms of the people who are on there. I think I bring that experience to the First District Court of Appeals, and I'm interested and happy to have the opportunity to continue to serve the people of Hamilton County. So thank you very much. I'm asking for a promotion this year, and I appreciate your consideration.
All right, Judge Zayas.
When I was first hired by the people of Hamilton County, I had no political background and I had never been a judge. So while I knew why I was running and why I wanted to be a judge, and it was that frustration of being in front of outcome determinative judges, I didn't know if I was going to be good at it. And so it's been a real blessing because the Court of Appeals has really tapped into not only my strong suits, including that engineering brain, but also all the experience that I have had in life, both wonderful experiences, challenging experiences, and I've been able to take them all into this function and feel that I've been able to really not only excel, but really change the course of Hamilton County. But keep in mind that the Court of Appeals is a collaborative court. It is a team. So as Judge Grouse and Judge Nestor and even Judge Moore has mentioned, you know, we're in here, we want to do this as a team and continue to move this court forward. There's been so much change that we've been able to implement because of the team that we have and because of commitment that we have and because of the perspective that we have. We've allowed people and attorneys to be able to really much more fully represent and be able to fully present their cases. We've done so much outreach to the community. Students for me is my passion besides the law. This program that I created, I've already hosted nearly 1,000 students. And so for me, this has been an incredible journey, incredible privilege in ways that I could have never have foreseen. And it would just be an honor to continue to serve you and to be able to work on this team and for us to continue to move forward and literally make sure that it's only in the forward direction that we're going.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you for your confidence, but I am not quite a judge yet. I'm trying to get there, and I look forward to
See what that has to do for you? You're being elevated.
But one of the things I look forward to is serving with these slate mates of mine who have been judges and been judges on the Court of Appeals. And I think one of the things I'm most excited about with this particular slate, frankly, is the diversity that we bring to this job, and not just racial or gender diversity, but diversity of experience. We have judges that have been on the Court of Appeals for a long time. We have judges that have been trial court judges. We have me, who has been in private practice for 30 years. And, you know, as Judge Krause pointed out, I think the fact that I have tried cases, the fact that I have appeared in courts of appeal throughout the state, the fact that I have to answer to clients who need to know when is their matter going to be resolved, clients who need to have certainty of what the court's going to do. I think that mix of experiences is going to make this court even stronger than what it has been in the past. And I look forward to bringing my years of experience to service on the court for the citizens of Hamilton County. And I, again, want to thank the CBA for this opportunity to present our backgrounds and our experience and answer the questions that are put to us, because I think that this job that we're applying for requires that we be subject to scrutiny, that we be subject to these kind of questions to make sure that the citizens of Hamilton County, the voters, understand that who they are picking for this job. So thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and I hope I can have your support for a seat on the First District Court of Appeals. Thank you.
Just as a housekeeping matter, because the slate was referred to, we want the listening audience to know that all candidates were invited to participate tonight. Whether you were a Republican or a Democrat, we invited everybody, and it was open. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.